I had to hold on to the wall because I felt this panic attack or anxiety attack come on me. I didn't know what it was, and I was totally paralyzed. I just stood there shaking as if that was the end of me. Well, good morning to everybody and welcome to Timeout. My name is Jack Vint and it's great to be with you this morning. I'm going to ask you a question this morning. Have you ever had a panic attack or an anxiety attack and wonder what just happened to me? I'm going to be sharing about that just in a moment, but before that I just want to say thank you to all those that watch Timeout and comment. I just want to give a shout out to some of the ladies that faithfully just make a comment and share this, and so I want to say thank you to Emery. I want to say thank you to Annika and to Siobhan, for Janet, for Margaret, for Cherise, and the many other ladies and people that comment. Thank you very much. And perhaps you watched this morning and you just wanting to say something, just put your name there if you want to. If you don't want to say something specific and just where you're from, it will be good to hear from you this morning. Now, as we go into the subject of panic attacks and how they can happen to you, and or anxiety attacks, and then leaving you wondering what just happened to me and why. Now, before I go there, I just want to say that when I was at school, which was many years ago now, I do remember having these visits from white coat people. It seemed to me that was my memory of them, which used to come to our school to do IQ tests. Now, I don't know if you can remember that. I'm sure you do. And it was quite a hoo-ha, and they would arrive at the school in secrecy, and they would then they would do these IQ tests on us and on the students. And it left you a little bit anxious when they came, almost like they were going to give you a vaccine for the virus. And it was all secretive, and you didn't know the score, and it was, and as kids you always used to ask, or naturally, what was my score? How did I do? And they would just smile, and they couldn't tell you, but I just knew from the look on their face. When they looked at me, they were saying, well, I can't tell you, but let's just put it this way, Jack, Einstein. Sometimes it left me feeling, I wonder if I passed, maybe I failed my IQ test. Well, I don't know about you, but that just was my experience. Now, an IQ test, they say, is an intellectual quotient. In other words, how we comprehend things intellectually. And, for many years, it was regarded as something that was standard to detect whether you were, intellectual. Now, recently they found there are many gaps in the old IQ tests, and they weren't that comprehensive as was originally thought, but they were still a standard. And although they never gave you the results at school, you knew who the smart kids were because they were sitting the first three in the front row, and then of course you were sitting a lot further back. Now, it's interesting that if IQ test was going to make you a smart person or prove that you're a smart person, it's funny that the smart people aren't always necessarily the happiest or the most successful people. Now, I'm not saying they're not at all. I'm just saying you would think that if that was the standard, then all the high IQ people should be extremely happy and extremely successful. But it's been proven through history and facts that that's not always the case, because it's not all just about our IQ. And then in the recent years, they started speaking about another standard called an EQ. And an EQ is an emotional quotient that they measure about how we react in life. And our EQ is basically how we recognize and deal with emotions in our lives, and also in the lives of other people we interact with. Now, I'm telling you this because this is important for you, as it was for me when I heard it. An EQ, as in an IQ test, you basically can't really change your IQ that much, they say, or improve it dramatically. But when it comes to an EQ, you can substantially improve your EQ level in your life, your emotional quotient. And that's quite encouraging to hear, because they are saying, more and more of the professionals are saying that they would rate an EQ higher than an IQ. So for all of us, that leaves us with a lot of hope. Now, the reason I share that with you is because, the Bible says that we are made up of three parts. We are a spirit, we are a body, and we are a soul. Spirit, soul, and body. And if a third of us is made up of emotions, 33.3%, then, and we don't look or recognize that third of our lives, it means that even if we get 100% in the other two parts of our life, 100%, the best we can ever come up with is 66.66 recurring. I mean, I don't need an IQ test to tell me that. But, so in other words, when you say to somebody, I don't feel complete, I don't feel whole as a person, it may just be that you are cutting out a third of what makes you as a person, your emotions, by not recognizing or dealing with them. And so at best, you can never be whole as a person, because you're always going to just hit 66.66 recurring. Now, I say that to you because going back to, why do we have panic attacks or anxiety attacks in our lives? Why do you have it? Now, it may just be because of this reason, that you don't always see the importance of your emotional quotient, your EQ, as relevant, and how you are responsible to keep that EQ and to feed it and to nourish it, because it's going to do something great in your life or leave you feeling a little bit empty. Now, when I was growing up, I also just realized that it's that when people said, I'm feeling a little bit emotionally low or I'm struggling, I didn't always have empathy with that or understand it fully, because I never struggled with that in my life, and I always felt strong until I got into my 50s. And then one day I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember I looked at the clock to go to the bathroom, and coming back, I had to hold on to the wall because I felt this panic attack or anxiety attack come on me. I didn't know what it was, and I was totally paralyzed. I just stood there shaking, as if that was the end of me. That I honestly felt that was the end of me. Now, of course, being a man and trying to work everything out with my IQ, the first attack wasn't enough to make me do something about it. I had another 2 attacks, panic attacks, at similar times in the morning. And when I was finished with the third one, I resolved I need to get help. And I want to just say to you this morning, when you go through emotional things, sometimes it is important that you get help. And I remember going to my doctor to tell him now I wanted to share this experience, because I wasn't dead yet, what happened to me. And I remember he had a wry smile, almost like those people that were looking at me when I asked them about my IQ score. And he said, Jack, what you experience, we call the feeling of impending doom. And I thought, gee, it's so popular, they've got a name for it. The feeling of impending doom. I immediately said, that's what I felt. Well, he helped me that day, and I understood something about my wholeness that maybe I had neglected. Maybe you've neglected that because you feel strong, and then one day you wake up and you're not that strong. Now, I want to share with you, what can you do? Because your question may be, okay, I have suffered a panic attack or an anxiety attack. What can I do to nourish my emotions and increase my EQ, my emotional quotient in my life? Because I have perhaps neglected that. So I want to give you 3 things that I feel are great to help and start. You need to, number 1, go for help. If you are desperate, you need to find somebody to help you. But these are the 3 things that you can do as a maintenance. Now, I say 3 L's because, then you can remember them. And the first one would be learn to laugh. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but learn to laugh. Now, I have learned this technique of laughing at myself, which I never used to. And if anybody would see me sometimes, they would think I'm crazy and that, don't worry about your IQ. They'd think you're insane. And so I've learned to laugh at myself, especially when I do silly things. And I'd say, Jack, you're a real idiot for doing that. But then I would preferences with, you know what, I am a real idiot. But at least I'm not just any idiot, I'm God's idiot because I'm a child of God. So we need to learn to laugh at ourselves. Now, did you know, and I read this is just things I've read before, that many successful, great comedians that make lots of people laugh suffer from depression and suffer from anxiety. And many of them have said they have had thoughts of suicide. Now, isn't that strange that people that give so much pleasure to other people through humor find it very difficult to receive that pleasure for themselves? And I think it's because they become so used to making others laugh that they've forgotten that they too need to laugh at themselves. And when you laugh at yourself, something happens in your emotional quotient that just causes it to rise. And when you laugh at yourself, it's easier when other people do silly things to give them some credit and laugh at them. Then it doesn't seem to be as bad as we sometimes perceive as people. So the first one would be learn, Jack, to laugh. You need to learn to laugh at yourself. The second L would be one that's difficult. You need to learn to let go. Why do you hold on to things like sometimes it could be a memory, a thought, a failure, a person, a situation, and you hold on to that and you can't let go? And if we don't learn to let go and hold on to these things, what happens to us is they don't fill our tanks. They don't cause us to rise. They pull us down. And if we have too many of these things in our lives, we can have an anxiety attack or a panic attack. So we need to learn to let go of the things that empty our tank and don't cause us to rise, and only hold on to those things that cause us to soar like an eagle and to fill our tanks. But even with those things, we can't hold on to too many of them at once, because otherwise even the good things in our lives can pull us down. So we need to, the second L, learn to let go. You need to learn to let go. And the last one, the last L is you need to learn to live. How to live. Now, there's a difference between being alive and living. And let me demonstrate it this way. When I wake up in the morning and I put my hand before my mouth to feel, is there any breath coming out of me? And I say, yes, there's breath coming out of me. I'm alive. Yes, I'm alive, but it doesn't mean to say I'm living. There's a difference between being alive and living. When I am living, I am doing things in my life that make me feel alive. I'm not just living with breath, I am living with life. And so we need to learn to do things that make us feel alive in our life. Because if we don't, our emotional quotient may just go down, down, down. And at the end, all we will be is we will say, I've got some breath left. I'm still alive, but I don't feel like getting out of bed this morning because I've forgotten, and you've forgotten, how to live. So this morning, I want to say to you, if you've ever had a panic attack, if you've ever had an anxiety attack, there is nothing wrong with you except you need to go back and look at your emotional quotient, and you need to remember the 3 L's that I've given you, which is you need to learn to laugh at yourself, you need to learn to let go, and you need to learn to live. And if you do that, I can assure you you won't, like me, have to go to that doctor, and where he tells you what you've just experienced is that feeling of impending doom, because that's not a feeling that I want to recommend to anybody. Well, God bless you. My name is Jack Vint, and you've been watching Timeout. I'll catch you next week.
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a soul.